Yeah, that was an amazing panel, folks. And yeah, I'm gonna keep my final remarks here relatively short. I want to say just a little bit about some of the agent-based modeling that I've been working on with my team at SingularityNET, and then give some brief remarks on where I see the whole agent-based modeling effort for COVID going, generally speaking, building on the amazing work from everyone here. I believe I'm actually ready to roll here. So yeah, I'm gonna take maybe 5 to 10 minutes and review a few of the things we've been working on regarding agent-based modeling of COVID-19 at SingularityNET, and how that connects to some of our other AI efforts, and then wrap up with some more general comments about where all this is going. So first, I want to return to a few of the points that my colleague Dr. Deborah Duong gave in her earlier talk, and Debbie went into a whole bunch of depth on the motivations and the thinking behind this work, which makes my job a little bit easier here. So we've been talking about some efforts to take Petronio Candido's agent-based models, which he went through in a great deal of depth in his earlier talk, and use them to explore some more in-depth issues regarding, for example, the impact that could be had on COVID-19 spread of wearables that help you tell if you are likely to be infected with something, maybe COVID, even before you're showing symptoms. So one of the things that Debbie was talking about in this regard was some papers by Michael Snyder and colleagues, and I'm showing a diagram from one of Dr. Snyder's papers here. And Dr. Snyder actually spent a couple of years measuring his own body with a huge number of different sensors. So he measured his activity, his calories, his heart rate, his location as he flew around, his temperature. He measured his sleep cycle, his blood oxygen levels, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And he fed all this into some anomaly detection methods, and he found he was able to identify, if he was about to get sick or in any other sort of unusual state before he consciously felt it. There was then a follow-up study of, I guess it was 43 people, measuring their bodies in different ways, not with quite as much instrumentation, but also the result is, a couple of days in advance, you're able to identify the signs of an infection in the body from combining sort of anomaly detection on various biosignals. And you don't need to be like a walking laboratory instrument for this. I mean, this can all be done with a Fitbit, a digital thermometer, simple peripherals for your smartphone. So this is really quite interesting, and it's something we've been working on in a spinoff from SingularityNET called Rejuve, where we've been looking at building an app to operate within the overall Rejuve ecosystem that I'll describe in a moment. And the app helps monitor your body state, so much as in Dr. Snyder's study. So the app, it asks you questions, but it can also connect to an activity tracker, a thermometer, a pulse oximeter, heart rate variability, and doing machine learning based anomaly detection, including some variational autoencoder neural nets written by Debbie Duong, who spoke earlier. It can identify, a few days in advance if you seem to be infected. Now, actually the original reason we put together this app wasn't COVID-19. The original reason we put together this app was Rejuve is focused on longevity. Some of us enjoy living so much we never want to be dead. We want to prolong our lives as long as possible. And there's an increasing amount of science aimed at healthy life extension. But if you want to live as long as possible, it's interesting to monitor how your body is doing and feed information about your body state and feed it into an AI that can flag any problems early, so that you can do something about them, so they won't impede your path to as long a lifespan as possible. But this same app we've been experimenting with for Rejuve to help guide people toward healthy longevity, I mean, it can also be very useful for helping to guide you towards surviving the COVID-19 epidemic. I mean, we can't, of course, stop you from getting infected with an app. On the other hand, we can help tell you if your body is in a condition to survive COVID-19 should you get it, right? And I mean, there's a differential impact of age on dying of COVID-19, and there's specific weaknesses in the heart, in the respiratory system, in the immune system that make it more likely you'll die or suffer badly if you get COVID-19. So we can tell from monitoring your body state if you're likely to fare okay or really badly should you get infected. And we can also tell in advance, even when you're asymptomatic and don't feel sick, we can tell if you're in the early stages of getting an infection. Now, right now with the app as we have it, we can't tell, are you in the early stages of getting the flu, or are you in the early stages of getting COVID? I mean, the signs are similar, not identical, but they're similar. But this is where the overall Rejuve ecosystem comes in. So what we're aiming to do with Rejuve is use our SingularityNET platform to make an ecosystem involving individuals who are contributing their own biological and medical data, and biomedical researchers who want to analyze this data, AI researchers and analysts and creators of AI tools to help crunch all this data, then clinics that can supply therapies to the members of the Rejuve network, including therapies discovered based on the data the members have provided. So we're trying to sort of close a bunch of loops here, because to discover new therapies to prolong life, or to help prevent COVID or help you survive COVID, to discover new therapies, you need a bunch of data. Well, where does the data come from? It comes from people's bodies, and we want to cut short the complexity that we have in the current medical system, where data goes from people into hospitals or pharmaceutical companies, and then it's directed toward their individual profit goals. We want to take the data directly from people into secure blockchain-based online data wallets, where you have data sovereignty and the data is controlled by the person whose body the data came from. And then we want to use this data to fuel AI analysis, biomedical analysis, to discover therapies. People can try those therapies, report the data from their bodies on how the therapies are doing for them, and then you have a much more efficient, modern, and democratic and AI-driven medical ecosystem. So Rejuve, you can look at rejuve.io. I mean, this is something we've been working on a while, incubating within SingularityNET since 2018, focused on longevity. But I mean, in the end, health is health, right? I mean, if you die of COVID, you're not gonna reach the Methuselarity and live to 500 or 1,000. And if your body is in a robust enough state that you have a high probability of getting through a COVID infection without so terrible of a problem, your body is also in a better state to live for the next several decades, so you can benefit from new longevity therapies. And we've also been working on of course the AI tools for analyzing all this data. This is really where I got into all this. So we're working on neural symbolic AI, putting OpenCog symbolic reasoning together with Debbie's neural networks for analyzing biomedical data, wrapping these into an application framework via our application company, Singularity Studio. But that will be a bit of a digression. So I want to get back to the agent-based modeling, and going back to what Debbie was talking about. How do these apps to identify when you're getting sick even before you can feel it? Like how do these help out with agent-based modeling? So we've been within SingularityNET software team, we've been playing with Petronio Candido's agent-based modeling framework, which we heard a fantastic in-depth talk about earlier in this summit, and we've been extending it in a few ways. I mean, we've ported it to the Python Mesa simulation framework, which is easy to work with and provides greater scalability. We're making the simple agents in Petronio's original simulation more complex. We've integrated with GIS systems, so you can have the agents moving on a realistic map. And as Debbie was describing, most interestingly, we're looking at adding some intelligence to these agents. I want to describe just a couple of the simple initial things we've done here. So we've been looking at how do you simulate the impact of wearables that help you identify infection early, and we've been doing this in a couple different ways. So here we can look at 3 different scenarios, and this is kind of simplified. I mean, you can look at a whole lot of scenarios in terms of like how effective is the wearable, and much of what Debbie was going over in her talk was some of these complexities. I mean, you have many variables: how many people use the wearable, or how useful it is the wearable. What's its success odds? What I'm going to show here, for sake of simplicity, is just a few very simple examples. So we look at 3 cases. Like, okay, no one is wearing a special wearable. No one is trying to identify if they have the disease when they're asymptomatic. They just wait till they show the symptoms and are really sick. And the next case is a quarter of the population is using a wearable to identify early disease and then get tested if they think they have the disease based on the wearable and the app. And the third condition is 50% of the population has the wearable, and some Rejuve app or some other app that does anomaly detection to tell early if you may have COVID or something else wrong, so you can get tested. So the graph here shows the percent of the population that has various conditions over time. The x-axis is number of days, y-axis is percent of population, and you can see the slope going down is the percent who are susceptible, under the assumption that people who have been infected before are less susceptible than people who have been infected already. There is some reinfection, which we're trying to quantify, and then the curves that go up and then down. I mean, these are people with symptoms and spreading, or people who are infected, and the curves at the very bottom are death. And so you can see here what happens without any early identification of asymptomatic sick people who may also be spreaders. Now, if 25% are using the app, then the curves are flatter. We're squashing this curve, not flattening the curve in the sense that the curve is coming down at the end, but we're flattening the whole curve from beginning to end, because we're assuming a different condition. And if we have 50% of the population using the wearable, then the number of people isolated exceeds the number of people who are symptomatic and spreading, and you're going into a different regime. Because here we see, like, with half the people using these devices and this app, I mean, then we're in a condition where more people who are sick are being isolated than spreading, and this affects the dynamics. It greatly reduces the number of people who die, and none of this in itself is incredibly surprising, obviously, but it's the starting point for more fine-grained modeling, because then we have to look at real situations, like maybe higher income people are more likely to be using this app, and how does this synergize with the different behaviors that the higher income people using the app may have with the lower income people who aren't using the app because they couldn't afford the medical peripherals. And then one part of doing this more fine-grained modeling is combining your agent-based model with a GIS system. So then you have people going all around this is a map of Toronto, but we're integrating with maps from a bunch of different places. And within Python Mesa, there's a lot of nice ways to integrate GIS map data with your agent-based model. So you have the integration of agent-based model with a map. Though, if you then had a bunch of people using the Rejuve app or other similar apps for measuring the health of your body, I mean, the apps, as Debbie pointed out, the apps are not only telling you stuff about your own body to tell you, like, how healthy are you, how likely are you to survive COVID, how likely is it that you're in the early stages of an infection. The app can also report information to others, so that the spread of, say, pre-symptomatic COVID in a certain neighborhood could be tracked before anyone gets sick in that neighborhood. From multiple people using such an app, you could tell that there's a bunch of pre-symptomatic people there, which means maybe other people should avoid that neighborhood, for example. And this brings us into a point that came up several times today. This is great, but let's pay attention to who owns and controls all of this information. What we don't want is like Big Brother on biometric AI, right? I mean, all this data coming out of our bodies should be owned by us. And if there's data integration to track the spread of disease, that's great. There should be. We're a cross-connected society, and there needs to be high-level data analytics and integration. But this should be done in a way that preserves data sovereignty, preserves privacy, and the data out of my body is controlled, and what it's used for is guided by me. And it should be open source code, which is controlled by open federations of users and developers, not by large corporations and not by government agencies. And I mean, this is one thing we're dedicated to, doing this work within SingularityNET with our partners such as Ocean Protocol and Decentralized AI Alliance. So, I mean, we're at the somewhat early stages with this work. I mean, we're just taking Dr. Petronio's stuff, we've put it into a scalable framework, and he's working on scaling it up in different and overlapping ways. We're looking at, how can we adapt our longevity-oriented wearable to help with COVID, which we're a substantial way through, integrating with map systems. And I think once all this is done, we're going to have a very powerful framework for understanding the impact of different policies and on spread of COVID-19. But even more importantly, I mean, we want to help beat COVID-19 as well as we can, and use the resources and the knowledge that are available to do it. But we also want to make sure that when the next pandemic hits, or the next crazy global crisis, whatever it may be, hits, that we have an effective tool for gathering data in a secure and privacy-preserving, data sovereignty respecting way, analyzing this data using really smart AI, doing accurate modeling of the situation. I mean, all this infrastructure has got to be there, and it's got to be controlled in a democratic and participatory way. And it's absolutely ridiculous that the human race doesn't have this right now. I mean, the lack of this kind of infrastructure for, in a secure and private way, gathering data from people, simulating with agent-based modeling, analyzing it with AI, the lack of this kind of infrastructure, this is why all of us are sitting shut up in our goddamn houses now and can't go out to the restaurant, right? This is why the economy is letting huge percentage of the population be unemployed. I mean, this is the lack of a system for our own society to understand and model itself is absurd, given the advanced technology that we have, and it has now resulted in a very ridiculous situation across the world. And I can tell you, if we don't build these kinds of tools and scale them up now, make sure they're deployed in a democratic and participatory and decentralized way, after COVID is beaten, within, say, 5, 7, 8 years after that, we're going to see some much worse crisis sweep the globe, and we're gonna really, really, really wish we had this sort of infrastructure then, if we don't build it and roll it out now. Fortunately, there's some amazing networks of people coming together to build the stuff and roll it out now. We've got close to 700 developers in the COVID-a-thon decentralized AI hackathon working on bringing blockchain and AI together to build tools to combat COVID. And we've got the amazing applied and theoretical minds that we've pulled together in this summit here today to sort of provide the breadth of wisdom and insight that we need to build all this code. So to wrap up briefly, I want to go over what I think, what needs to be done to do things right in terms of COVID-19 and then the next pandemic or other unpredictable global crisis. And I'm not going to talk here about discovering vaccines or cures. I mean, I think that's obvious. We need to do that. It's very important. And there's a lot of things being done wrong there also. I mean, we need to get data about the human body out in the open rather than siloed in pharmaceutical companies and hospitals. We need to get all the data about all of our bodies out in the open so we can be applying machine learning, machine reasoning, neural symbolic AI to this data in the whole so that we can more rapidly discover new therapies and more effectively do personalized medicine to discover which therapies will work for which person. I mean, there's all that, which we're also doing a ridiculously stupid job of as a society, which is leading to so many people dying each year who don't need to die, and is why we haven't beaten death yet in spite of the amazing medical and AI technologies and other technologies we have. But purely on the agent-based modeling side, what needs to be done is listed on this slide. I mean, first there's data. If you look in Hong Kong or South Korea, it's pretty decent what data that they have gathered about people's movements, people coming across the border, which person came across the border from China on which day, how many people live in this apartment building, what was the flow of cars past this traffic signal, what was the flow of people through this square. I mean, the amount of data aggregated there is impressive. I mean, in Hong Kong, there's the added fact that all that data is fed into the Chinese government's central database, which there's a variety of perspectives on, to be sure. But from a modeling point of view, data is being gathered. In the US, we gather amazing data on who clicks on which website to buy which worthless piece of junk they don't actually need. But we're very poor at gathering data about people's movements, which would be helpful for modeling the spread of COVID. Now, the plus there is that we're further from having a fully fascist surveillance state, but this is what blockchain is tailor-made to solve, right? We need to be gathering data, and we need to be doing it in a way that preserves privacy and data sovereignty. We need to be pulling that data together so we can analyze it. And this is the problem, for example, that Ocean Protocol solves, among a number of other excellent blockchain projects, to pull together data from all over the place in a way that encrypts that data, but yet makes it available for AI analysis. And that's the next thing we need to be doing. We need to analyze all this data with statistics, which sometimes is the best tool, with machine learning, and then not only with standard machine learning tools, but with tools that can generalize and make leaps of imagination and understanding, but with machine reasoning. And again, the level of data analysis in many practical domains, many parts of biology is it's not nearly as advanced as, for example, in finance. I mean, the amount of intellectual firepower and computer time that goes into predicting markets is insanely more than the amount that goes into figuring out how to make people not get sick and die or not get COVID-19. Given all this, we then need to build better simulation models. I've been focusing on agent-based simulation. Of course, standard differential equation simulations also have a role. In Eva Lee's talk today, we heard about combination of differential equation and agent-based simulations, which is great. And these simulations need a lot of data, and they can be structured by the results of AI analyses. And in the end, as you make more and more complex agent-based simulations with intelligent agents fueling their activity. I mean, in the end, you're moving closer and closer toward what I've talked about a lot as artificial general intelligence, because we're dealing with unprecedented situations, right? There's never been an infection like COVID before, and whatever pandemic comes next may be different in other weird, qualitatively different ways. So ultimately, you need a system that can generalize from quite different situations to tell you something about a new situation. You need an AI that can look at data from measles and Ebola and social networks and all sorts of other things, and can leverage what it learned from these different types of data to help it structure the agent-based simulation of COVID-19. But you know, the modeling being done now and the data analysis being done now is so weak and so oversimplistic that there's a real lot of steps between where we are now and real AGI-powered agent-based simulation. And the point is, we should be going through those steps. I mean, that's one thread to be followed along the path from the narrow AI of today toward general intelligence. One of those threads is more and more generally intelligent agent-based simulations of social systems, including epidemiological systems. That path from narrow AI to AGI will occur in parallel with the path from narrow AI robots to general AI robots, in parallel with the path from narrow AI bioinformatics systems to generally intelligent bioinformatics systems, and so forth. Right now, in the epidemiology domain, we're not progressing very quickly along that path, which no one cared very much until the lack of an understanding of these things led us to all be trapped in our houses and our governments to be blowing trillions of dollars a month. And next point, we need to be using these policies. Rather, we need to be using these simulations in order to evaluate, the potential or probable outcomes of the policies put in place. And that's what we're not doing now. In my talk this morning, I gave a bunch of examples of that. Like, when do we reopen schools? Is it really still useful to be banning travel between two places that already have the pandemic? Is Robin Hanson's idea of variolation actually worth considering as part of our palette for dealing with these issues? How much impact can an app like the one we're developing in Rejuve that gives early warning that you may be sick, how much impact does that have? We don't have any good scientific way to answer these questions until we have a much more thorough agent-based modeling framework. And we need that, or else we're making these huge decisions by the seat of our pants or based on, political posturing and gut feel rather than science. And, the immediate thing is to take policies people are proposing and evaluate what are they likely to lead to in the real world situation. But actually, AI can also design policies. I mean, if you give the AI a decent simulation and you then tell the AI what are the objectives, like don't let people die and also don't yet let the world go bankrupt, right? I mean, then the AI can put its creative hat on and can design policies that may achieve these ends better than the simplistic policies people come up with. Then the hardest part, last on my list, would be to actually put effective policies into place once they were figured out. But that's above my pay grade. I'll put that off onto somebody else. And in seriousness, Yanir Baryam, our first speaker, had a lot of interesting things to say about that, and has a lot of experience bringing the results of complex simulations, into the domain of actual implemented policy. And it certainly isn't easy. That last step may be harder than all the rest put together. But I think given what's at stake, it behooves us to try, and the odds of success at carrying out all these pieces are at least reasonable. And today in this summit, we've heard from a lot of wise and technically brilliant and fascinating people. We've heard about what they're doing, to achieve different steps in this sequence I've given here, and we've also heard a bunch of cautions about the limitations of some of these tools, how we might work around them, and the the broader context in which they're being deployed. And I'm hopeful that some of the conceptual and human connections formed through this conference today may help accelerate our progress along this path at least a little bit. So yeah, thanks to everyone who's been watching, and anyone who watched this whole thing. I mean, my hat is off to you. But even if you've just dipped in and out, I'm thankful to you for paying attention, and I'm hoping that some of the ideas we've developed here will take on over the coming weeks. Because I mean, while we're looking to build tools and ideas and methodologies of broader use for humanity as it develops through multiple crises and recoveries, I mean, we're also looking to do something that's gonna help right now. And that is all. Thanks for listening, everyone.